In this video, you're going to learn how to simplify radicals. You're going to need this next year in geometry, so we just wanted to give you a head start on simplifying them. What you always need to do is just find the biggest perfect square, and I put a bunch of them up top here, that goes into the number underneath the radical. So the steps are you move the number outside the radical until the end. The first one there isn't a number outside, but the second one there is, and I'm going to show you how to do that. You find the biggest perfect square that goes into the number underneath the radical, simplify the perfect square radical, and then multiply any numbers outside. Sounds like a lot, but I'm just going to show you. So what you need to do is figure out what perfect square up top here, the biggest perfect square that would go into 128. So 128 would fall somewhere around here. So it's definitely not 144 or 169 since 128 falls right here. I can start with my calculator and start dividing perfect squares in. I need to keep going until I find the perfect square that gives me a whole number as the answer. It's definitely not 100, so I'm just going to skip over that. So when I divided 128 by 64, I got 2. So my next step is to put square root of 64, square root of 2. Square root of 64 times the square root of 2 gets me the square root of 128. Now, if you already know in your head that the square root of 64 equals 8, that's great. If not, you hit second, x squared to get the square root, and it's the same thing on your delta math. You get 8. 8, the square root of 2 is not a perfect square, it's not up top here, so I just rewrite it. So the square root of 128, simplified, is 8 square root of 2. Alright, let's look at the next one. Now in the next one, there's a 3 outside. What this really just means is 3 times the square root of 63. So I'm going to ignore the 3 for a second and just break down the square root of 63. 63 falls right here, so then I'm going to start trying the numbers to the left of 63. I know 49 doesn't work, I know 36 doesn't work, I know 25 doesn't work. Let's try 16. Gives me a decimal. Let's try 9. Gives me a whole number, which is 7. So 9 and 7 are going to go under the square roots. The square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 7 stays the same. This 3 times that we put up top here is going to jump right to the front. So 3 times 3, square root of 7. We can simplify 3 times 3. That gets us 9. And that is your final answer. You can also check right from the beginning. Square root of 64 falls up here. And we already did that in the first problem. Square root of 64 is 8. So this answer just simplifies to 8. Always check to see if you have a perfect square first. Alright, our next one. I'm going to move that 2 over a little bit and put this times sign since it's really just saying 2 times the square root of 12. 12 would fall right in here. 4 is the only perfect square that goes into 12, or the biggest perfect square that goes into 12. The square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 3 stays the same. This 2 times that I put out front drops right to the front of that simplified answer. 2 times 2 is 4. Square root of 3 is your answer. Alright. If you want to freeze it and try the next few by yourself, you're more than welcome to. If not, I'm going to work through it. The biggest perfect square that goes into 24 is 4. And 4 times 6 gets me 24. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 6. The biggest perfect square that goes into 28 is 4. And 4 times 7 gets me 28. Square root of 4 is 2. That 3 comes right to the front. 3 times 2 is 6. Square root of 7. Okay. The biggest perfect square that goes into 243 is 81. And I times it by 3. Square root of 81 is 9. Bring that 4 to the front. 36 square root of 3 is your simplified answer. Square root of 4 is the biggest perfect square that goes into 40. And 4 times 10 gets me the 40. 2 square root of 10, because 10 is not a perfect square. Sign in office hours if you have any questions.